Before we go to questions on the floor, Kingsley, so you spoke about how you went from the middle of the Australian summer to the middle of the Boston winter to launch the Ireland Funds in Boston, and Tony O'Reilly, whatever else was said about him, was also a demanding boss, didn't suffer fools lightly. And your brief was to start to build a network there, and in an area where you didn't know anyone. So if you look back on that, what do you think were the 3 or 4 steps that you did moving into an area? That might be maybe 3 or 4, come back to your case theory of steal everything that you can. What would be those 3 or 4 steps when you reflect back on it?
I learned a lesson that I think I applied to everything that I've done, which is, and I learned it from a book written by a guy called Dan Sullivan. The book's called Not What, Not Why, Not How, but Who. In other words, every time you have some form of challenge, don't think what it is or why it is or who that, what it's all about, but think who can help you. So starting with a blank sheet, I did it in Australia, then I ended up going to the US, and it was all about who's going to help me get to where I want to get to. So we launched the Ireland Funds in New York. We had a great big dinner in the Waldorf Astoria, the great and the good. We invited everybody in from Wall Street and everything. The dinner was so unsuccessful. The only reason we did a second dinner a year later was to pay for the first dinner. That's $600 million ago. So one of the lessons I learned is that nobody starts a large organization. The 21-year-old son of a Syrian migrant called Steve Jobs, in a garage with his 27-year-old pal, Steve Wozniak, put together some bits and pieces of a computer and sold the first Apple computer. In our lifetime, it's now a $3 trillion company, the biggest company in the world, the best known brand name in the world. And around the corner there was 2 guys, one called Doug Hewlett, another one called Jim Packard, started a printing company with $700. Zuckerberg started Facebook in a dorm. Amazon and Starbucks started some of these front rooms. Ryanair started in 1985 with 1 plane and 18 passengers, flew from Waterford to London. It's going to do 25 million passengers this month. So I love that notion. Nobody starts a large organization. And that was our experience with the Ireland Funds. I mean, we're a disaster, but we stuck at it. We had a slogan. I thought came up with a smart slogan, peace, culture, charity. And O'Reilly said, you know what, we're modeling on what the Jewish community have done for Israel. We're trying to do stuff for Ireland. So we're going to change our slogan to look Irish, dress British, think Yiddish, right? If you get those 3 things in alignment, you're onto something. And of course, he was right. And the organization grew, and we're in 13 countries around the world. And it was very powerful. I'd say one of, as I mentioned, in that eulogy I did from a few weeks ago, is that in 1997, we launched the Ireland Fund in South Africa, and we honoured Nelson Mandela. There was 1,000 people at the dinner, and Mandela comes in and he sees Tony O'Reilly there, and he says, Tony, he said, I saw you play rugby for Ireland before I went into Robben Island, and I was in Robben Island for 27 years, and when I came out, you were still on the Irish rugby team. But in 1997, we used that relationship we had with Mandela, and we sent all the leaders of the political parties in Northern Ireland to spend 3 days in Pretoria with him and with Cyril Ramaphosa and Ralph Meyer, the 2 men who ended apartheid in 1994 peacefully in South Africa. And they spent 3 days with all the leaders in Northern Ireland. And 1 year later, the Good Friday Agreement was signed in the North. And they would all say that it was that experience of listening to how those people have come together after such a fractious history, that made such a difference. So, small things have big impacts.
Okay, thank you very much.